Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Brian Hayes, Frankie Corrado. We've got role play level of concern later in the hour. Brendan Dunlop will join us here in just a few moments on Drone Gate overseas. Canada spying on New Zealand's practice ahead of their match, the group stage. And two coaches have been sent home, and Bev Priestman will not be on the sidelines for that match against New Zealand.
Learned too much from the drones. Can't do it.
Can't do it.
You know, saw all that footage and was like, I have to recuse myself from this game against New Zealand. I just know the playbook. I know what you guys are doing. I'll be back for the next one, though, right after the ethics course that they're making us do.
Yeah, the ethics.
And it'll all be good.
It's all good. Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll get over this. No problem. Not going to be an issue whatsoever. I'm sure of it. So yeah, we'll see what Dunlop has to say about that. And there's a crazy game over there too. You see Morocco, Argentina today. I guess it went like 4 hours and 11 minutes because there was over an hour delay because Moroccan fans were storming the field. Like the games are not getting off to a great start here.
No, we got to be done with these flares. No, like I don't know. I guess if you're very traditional, old school soccer fan, like you like it. It's part of the environment. It's part of the atmosphere. It's something that's very unique. But when stuff like this happens, like, what the hell are we doing, man?
I know.
Like, we can probably avoid the kind of gong show that this game was.
Yeah, flares seem pretty unnecessary, and the storming of the field, it happens in college a little bit, although that's scaled back. But
that's got to stop too, man. That whatever that's called, the surge that they do in college basketball. That every time it happens now, there's a guy who rolls an ankle or gets hurt.
Someone gets hurt almost all the time.
Those guys are like finely tuned athletes who have NIL money coming to them, and like they're trying to make a living. And some goon who had 20 beers is going to take out his ankle. Like I get it. That stuff's been going on for a long time in college basketball. But at some point, things tend to end. I think that's one that probably needs to come to an end too.
Yeah, I don't know if it will because students, how do you stop it? And
I don't know.
I don't know. Especially with basketball, football, it happened. It used to be more of a thing that would happen a lot in sports.
Remember golf? Like the old footage of golf? As soon as that putt drops, it's like everyone's making a mad dash to the 18th cup to pick up that ball.
Back in the day, the ball was up for grabs. Whoever got it was allowed to get it. And
see, stop doing that. We can stop doing the other ones.
I guess so. I mean, I think it's one of those things where I think it looks cool, it feels cool until something goes wrong. Which means ultimately you probably have to err on the side of caution and not allow it to happen. But it used to happen all the time, like 70s, 80s, like famous play. I think in baseball, Yankee Stadium, was it Reggie Jackson who hit that big home run? That one, I think he had 3 home runs in a game, in a playoff game, and like the whole crowd, just the whole stadium, basically jumped on the field. When Joe Carter hit his home run, there were a bunch of fans who were on the field.
That's right. There were people running the bases.
Bunch of them out there, absolutely.
But at least
used to happen all the time.
Watch that footage back. And everyone's friendly, like everyone's just kind of cheering them on. Like when people are rolling ankles and getting hurt, and now their seasons or their training is in jeopardy, and you're doing something that kind of impinges on their career. That's that can't happen. That kind of stuff cannot happen.
I hear you, but it did today. It did today at the Olympic Games, no less. Like when you think of security, you think of the Olympic Games, and yet there was a circus today in that Morocco-Argentina match. So Brendan Dunlop will join us here in a moment. Role play level of concern a little bit later in the hour. Stan Bowman hired as the GM of the Oilers today, which it had been trending in that direction for a while, right, Frankie? Like you and I think a lot of people in the hockey world had heard, it had been reported that this was going to happen, yet it did feel like it kind of came out of nowhere today. Like I didn't get the impression earlier in the week that this was trending. Maybe it was news in Edmonton that just hadn't hit Toronto or, hadn't gotten online, but it seemed like kind of, I wouldn't say a news dump, but it was like out of nowhere. Hey, Stan Bowman's hired. He'll be speaking in a few hours, and then that's that. And we'll see at training camp, which I think seems very, very pre-planned because we know Stan Bowman's history, his story, obviously, his role in what took place in Chicago, the fact that he's been out of the game for 2.5 years. And he was asked about it countless times today. Jeff Jackson asked about it countless times today. And now, I don't think we'll see or hear from him again until statements are made because they've signed someone to a PTO or something like that.
For sure.
Right?
Sure. And and I know we got to get to Dunlop, but I'm sure we got a lot of time to talk about Stan Bowman. But I don't know, man. It's they had so much good mojo going from all the signings that they made. Everyone wants to be back. Everyone wants to run it back. I'm not going to call it a blemish, but it's a different kind of PR feel than what they've had going for them this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Everything was uber positive, and they made this choice. And Stan Bowman has been reinstated. I'm a believer in second chances. He's been 100%. Reinstated. And
yes. Make that very clear. Like,
yes.
You know what I mean? And it sounds like he's done the work. That's out there. That's documented. So that's all good. It's a privilege to be in the NHL. It's not a right. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter how long you've been there. Doesn't matter what your last name is. Doesn't matter how much you've won. He has that privilege again, and he has to do some good with what comes with his new opportunity.
Right, and it's a new opportunity that is one that I would think almost every other GM in the league would love to have because he's the GM of the Edmonton Oilers, right? Like completely different context, clearly. And completely different history, completely different story. But Mike Babcock had to get, quote unquote, back into the league with Columbus. Like he was going to try to get back in and resurface with Columbus. This is the Edmonton Oilers. This is Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, the prohibitive favorites to win the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Like he could win a cup. Stan Bowman could be on the ice in 10 months with a Stanley Cup.
It's a very good chance.
A very good chance that could happen. Yeah. Which again is something that's leading to quite the reaction in Edmonton and throughout the league. So more on that again throughout the afternoon. But yeah, the story of Canada soccer always stepping in it, so to speak, has written a new chapter here. Where yesterday the news broke around this time yesterday, I guess a little bit later than this time yesterday, that the women's team had been accused of flying a drone over New Zealand's practice facility and during their practice. And it later was reported there are actually multiple drones. This is like a Scorsese film. Like we've got multiple drones over there tracking New Zealand, because how could you possibly beat New Zealand without having some sort of cheating device? And it's led to two coaches that are on the staff being sent home, and Bev Priestman claiming that, okay, it's her responsibility. She's at the top. She's the head coach. So she's going to miss the match against New Zealand, but then she will return beyond that. It's not a good look. It's a tough scene. We're 48 hours away from the opening ceremony, and this is what Canadians are dealing with right now. And to talk about it, we're joined now by our good friend Brendan Dunlop, co-founder of Canadian Soccer Daily, and, of course, a soccer analyst here on TSN, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. All right, Dunlop, break this down for us. When you heard the story about 24 hours ago when it broke, and now the news that has come out in terms of multiple drones being used, multiple investigations, including now Canada Soccer doing their own independent investigation, two coaches being sent home, Bev Priestman missing the New Zealand game. How do you put this into perspective, considering we haven't even reached the opening ceremony yet?
Well, boys, here I thought that we've turned the corner when it comes to me speaking with you about Canada Soccer. We could actually talk about games and stuff. And no,
right.
we have to go drone gate. Move over New England Patriots. Hello, Bev Priestman and her extended coaching staff. Man, it's crazy, and it's really unfortunate that this is what we're dealing with and what the women's team is dealing with. Ahead of what would be a pretty historic games, an Olympic title defense, but also after the insane year that they had. Last year with all the off-field distraction in Canada Soccer, we'd finally got past all that, or so it seemed, and yet here we are talking about this Spygate. It's crazy. What's wild, boys, is that this actually isn't that unheard of or uncommon. There were allegations that John Herdman's teams have been using drones in this way. We've seen this with other teams. Argentina have been accused of this as well. And oftentimes they get to hide behind we're doing a documentary and we didn't realize the timing, or it was just a test run. And oftentimes that's why you don't hear about it. But this is the Olympics and there's a lot more eyes on it. And it's the 28th ranked team in the world. It's not France, who's number 2, who Canada play in their second game. That's what makes this even more bizarre, and I think, frankly, more and more embarrassing.
More embarrassing, absolutely. We're cheating against New Zealand. I mean, it's outrageous. It's It's outrageous. Go ahead, Frankie.
And you know what? So what's the bigger indictment for you, Reg? Is it the fact that if Bev Priestman knew this was happening, she allowed it to happen? Like that's a stain on Canada soccer. It's a stain on, Canada, quite frankly, for cheating. Or would it be more of an indictment that she didn't know this was happening? And it's like these are your underlings kind of doing this behind your back, and you need to get a grasp on your group and your leadership.
Yeah, I mean, she says she doesn't know that it's happening. She's taking responsibility, as a whole and being the head coach. So she's removed herself from the dugout. New Zealand's head coach also isn't there because they were having their own issues domestically in terms of players wanting the New Zealand coach out. So it's quite the bizarre opening to the games and to their Olympic title defense. I think for Bev Priestman, I personally find it hard to believe that she wouldn't know that this was happening. Obviously, you got to distance yourself from something like this. And to be honest, like how much do you actually gain from it? And it's not as if, as they say, it's not as if this isn't happening to an extent elsewhere. You just don't get caught. It's in a lot of ways, it's like the baseball sign stealing. Like we all knew it was happening to an extent. It's the Astros that did it, whether you say egregiously or more dramatically. That's what got them caught, and that's where Canada stepped into it now. So it really looks bad for her. I'll tell you, Frankie, though, I see the reaction online and people calling for Priestman's job, that this is it, this should be fired. When I see that, I actually think that that's an overreaction. I do think that there's a fine or some sanction, or you can limit them in some way. Remove it for the group stage, like that. That would be a real slap of the wrist to me. I don't think that she deserves to lose her job over this because, as they say, it's one of the unfortunate things that's kind of in the fabric of preparing for tournaments.
With that said, though, if they underperform, how can she possibly keep her job? Like, hasn't she put herself in a position where they have to medal, they have to perform well, or it's just going to be so easy for Canada soccer? And now you got the Olympics involved. You got the COC involved, too, to basically say you just got to get rid of everyone. Like, get rid of them all, restart, because it's so embarrassing how this all played out.
It could be that. And it's such a new era for Canada soccer as well. We talked last time, about Kevin Blue, the new CEO and general secretary of Canada soccer, being responsible for really turning the corner, hiring Jesse Marsh, scheduling those big friendlies that the men's team had. We were just starting to see, the start of that with the women's program. He's just taken the job a few months ago. And to think about cleaning house with that women's program, that'd be really unfortunate. There's a lot of real good work that Bev Priestman and her staff has done, and I think there's a lot they could still do. But in reality, going into these games, she was feeling the pressure, and I think that the stakes are higher. The expectations have been raised because, in a lot of people's eyes, they were fortunate to win 3 years ago. A COVID games, they got a U.S. team that was in transition. The European teams are so much better than 3 years ago. Like the qualitative gap between the North American teams and Europe and the rest of the world is so much smaller. This is a very challenging tournament for Canada, where I think the semifinals, I'm not even saying medal, just reaching the semifinals was probably the expectation and probably the measuring stick for her keeping her job. Now I think it's got to be that, with the expectation that it's bronze. And then you're not dealing with any of this again. There's no more scandal, no more off-field controversy. You're just talking about the games, Frankie.
I'm trying to picture what the reaction would be like if, I was on a hockey team and we got caught cheating. Like, I think the guys in the room would say, like, what a gong show this is. What kind of operation are we running here? Like, I'm curious how the players view this. Would the players kind of want this stuff to happen just so they can get an edge and, hey, we'll take our chances? Or are they like, what the hell are you guys doing there? And now we got to be the victims of whatever fallout happens here.
Yeah, no, I mean, publicly they're saying, "Hey, we're all a team. You win as a team, you lose as a team, you get caught as a team." I guess, but I think it's the latter, that they must feel like, look, is this really giving us a big advantage? Is worth the hoopla? Because I think a lot of those things don't always trickle down to the whole team, to the whole squad, right? And so that they already feel like they have a lot of pressure, this women's team, and this is one more distraction they really don't want. And as I say, with all the off-field stuff, the whole country was finally getting back on board with the Canadian national teams in general. For this to happen to the gold medalists, it's a real bad way to start.
With Brendan Dunlop, co-founder of Canadian Soccer Daily, TSN Soccer radio analyst, and I've been trying to figure that out the last 24 hours, like what you could possibly get from a practice. Like it's not like they're out there playing 11 on 11. You're going to know formations. You're going to know substitutions. Like it's I can understand it to an extent in football because they practice plays. maybe you see something, right? You see some sort of trick play that they've practiced, and if Belichick found it, then maybe Belichick can use it. I don't know what you could possibly gain from having access to a practice. Like what would they be getting out of this?
You have such limited access, though. This is the difficult thing, right? For us to comprehend. It would kind of be like, Frankie, if you had a junior team, an OHL team, and you were playing in some Russian all-elite tournament, you really don't have, beyond a few game tapes, a window to really study these players. And that would be a whole season of game tapes. In this case, you're talking about maybe 7 games a year, in which case there's a huge turnover in a group of players. It's often circumstantial. The quality of the opponent matters. Like New Zealand's not playing good opposition. They're playing these oceanic islands. So New Zealand are a big unknown for Canada, albeit Canada should be heavy favorites and will be heavy favorites and are expected to beat this team. They just don't know a lot about them. So it's just to get an extra knowledge edge, because unlike the US, unlike Brazil or France and Colombia, who they're going to play, they don't have as big of a study book. And that's really, I think, why it was a priority.
And, there's obviously going to be, there is fallout already. There's going to be more fallout. Like, how much more would you expect to happen here as the investigations continue to happen? Because everyone's going to have their hand in here wanting to investigate. It's going to be the IOC, the COC. Like, I don't know, does FIFA get involved? Like, I think there's going to be a lot of different hands trying to investigate this thing. How deep will the fallout end up going?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, FIFA is going to be involved. And I think, as we find out over the next few hours or next few days, if they can pull this back and say this was happening in Tokyo, that's when you're talking about, Bev losing her job. If they pull it back and say historically this has been happening, maybe they even
how would they find that out?
The men's program has been doing that.
How would they find that out though? They go to the coaches that were just sent home. Are they feeling vindictive possibly and thinking, hey, why am I the one falling on the sword here? Like, wouldn't that be where it would start? Dunlop, if you're Canada Soccer, you go to these coaches that were, I guess, running these drones and say, who sent you, how long you've been doing it, and if you get an honest answer, where do you go with that?
Well, it's definitely not to Canada Soccer's advantage to get all the details and investigate that deeply, right? But you seem like a guy that likes your procedural cop shows. I mean, you're going to have FIFA, you're going to have the IOC, you're going to have third parties. There'll be some American-funded lobbyist group that'll be looking into an investigation as well.
Okay.
Digging up old Japanese groundskeepers, trying to find out how were they treating things in Japan 3 years ago during COVID. Personally, I find it hard to believe that this was happening at a similar extent during the pandemic games, because there were so many eyes and restrictions and it was much more limited. But that would be, to me, that's the most damning thing. If that's what comes out next, then you're talking about some people losing their jobs. And I think there'll be a huge push for Bev Priestman to be one of them.
Absolutely. It's interesting where, the men and women, it's like they've balanced each other off for years, right? Where the women have been propping up the program for a long time and the men were kind of dragging things down. And now I wouldn't say it's reversed, because it's not the athletes' fault. Like, the athletes, like we all know, they won gold 3 years ago. Like, they've done a phenomenal job on the international level. But the men's side, it's been cooking. And the last time we spoke with you, they were on their way to play Uruguay in that third place match. They had it. And then it goes to penalties and it ends up getting away from them. But in terms of world rankings, they've moved up. In terms of Concacaf, I think that's more of an interesting conversation right now. Like, I think most Canadians are realistic here. Canada's not really chasing Argentina, not chasing Spain, not chasing like the heavyweights. But in terms of the U.S., Mexico, some other teams within Concacaf, like, have we hit a point here where Canada feels like they legitimately wear the crown on the men's side in CONCACAF, or should have enough confidence in suggesting that they're the best team at this point, and it's on the Americans in Mexico and whoever else to come chase us down and try to pass us again?
Yeah, I mean, we're Canadians, so no one's going to come out and say that, right? No one's going to show that confidence publicly, but do they deserve to have that behind closed doors? Do I think that Alphonso Davies and this younger group of players who are playing at the highest level in the Champions League on a regular basis and at a growing and increasing number? Yeah, I believe that they are the kings of CONCACAF. This men's team, what they've been able to do just since qualifying for Qatar has been incredible. The trajectory that Jesse Marsh has this program on, 2026 can't come soon enough. We spoke about what the expectation will be, and there's a lot of factors. There'll be some new players, there'll be some players that maybe have aged out, there'll be some injuries, but you're looking at 26, and now you're like, it's quarterfinals is the floor here. Quarterfinals feels like the expectation, and just participating in a 48 team World Cup 8 years ago in 2018 when Canada was awarded it seemed unthinkable.
Well, it better not rain during the World Cup, or no one's going to be able to get to BMO Field. That's a bit of an issue. Whenever it rains in the city, the Parkway and the Lakeshore just have to shut down. So we might want to figure that out between now and 2026. But yeah, the team.
I'm sure that it always goes well in this city, right? The infrastructure. Whenever there's infrastructure needs, they always get it right. It's quick.
Yeah, just put more bike lanes.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll get everyone there.
We'll get some sandbags and some bike lanes going. We'll be ready to rock, man. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. All right, pal. Great catching up with you, man. We appreciate the insight on this as always. We'll do it again soon. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll speak again, boys. Enjoy it. You got it. Brendan Dunlop, co-founder of Canadian Soccer Daily and our TSN soccer analyst. Joining us here on the Maple Toyota hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, whenever it rains, there's just floods. This is the new norm now. All over the city. We get a heavy downpour of rain. DVP's flooded. Gardner's flooded. Yeah. There's other streets that are flooded, and basements are flooded. Yeah, it's really ugly. And this will be like the world. This is when the World Cup's going to be here. You know, like if it pours before a World Cup match at BMO, and we shut the stadium down because the Lakeshore is closed. I have no idea, that's just going to be a logistical nightmare. It's already. We have to figure this out. Well, I guess today they announced that they're moving up. You know, the final stage of the Gardner renovation or whatever. Which again, I think the first question that everyone in the city asks is, why was that delayed in the first place? No kidding. Like, what are we waiting for to get that done? They could drill through mountains and do tunnels 3 times faster than they've done the Eglinton Crosstown. Oh, it's a joke. That is the biggest joke. It is insane what's going on here. I know. It's so ridiculous. It's been a decade. They've been working on that crosstown on Eglinton for a decade. This is like the Guns N' Roses album that never came out. Right. Do you remember what I'm talking? What was it called? Chinese Democracy? Yeah, this album was coming out for 15 years. I still don't know if it came out. I as far as I know, it didn't. So that's probably what's going to happen with Eglinton. It just will never open. You know what it's going to be like? We were talking yesterday about all the Olympic stadiums and the parks of Olympic stadiums that eventually no one uses, and they just sit there and they grow in. Yeah. We will have all these stations on Eglinton that are shiny now. Eventually there's going to be weeds growing through them because this thing is never going to be used. Well, to put that into perspective, I saw someone post online that the Science Center is a stop on the line, and it doesn't exist anymore on Eglinton. Like, it's permanently closed, and they're going to likely move it downtown. So you built the station, and you named a station, and before it could open, it doesn't exist anymore. It's so absurd. They're going to have to change the name, which they'll do. But who's going to pay for that? Taxpayers are going to pay for that. Yeah. You got to change the name of it because the Science Center isn't around anymore. Yeah, on Eglinton. It's crazy wrazy what's happening. But the flooding is really scary stuff, man. Like, it's whenever you get a heavy rainfall down, like the Lakeshore, the Parkway, it completely shuts down effectively. Yeah. And again, the World Cup it's coming. Like, the world's going to be here in a couple of years. And if we don't figure this flooding thing out, it's probably a bit of an issue for us. I love the fact that all these, people are going to come from everywhere for this. Mm-hmm. They're going to go everywhere, right? Like, it's not just going to be Toronto. It's going to be Newark. It's going to be everywhere around North America. These people from Europe that maybe have never been here before, they're going to look around and they're going to go, how do these people live like this? What is going on over here? Like, it's so corners different. Of the world. Almost every country will probably be represented. It's some stop along the way in North America. Yeah. And listen, we're not alone here. Every city has their issues. Of course. But Toronto, like the congestion, the issue with traffic, the Parkway, the Gardner, the Lakeshore, the flooding, it's crazy. It's outrageous. Yeah, it's outrageous. And you know what? Here's the thing. Toronto,
has been and will be an unbelievable city. It'll be great hosts. The people involved will do an unbelievable job. All that stuff is true, but there are some serious issues going on right now in the city, and I think a lot of people are probably listening right now in that traffic that we're talking about, and they're nowhere near home.
So rattled. But at least they're going to change Queen Street to Taylor Swift Street when she arrives in November. That's on the docket. We got to get to the bottom of that down at City Hall.
Yeah, priorities.
Yeah, priorities.
Make sure top priority, because Taylor Swift really cares about that.
Yeah, she really needs to know that we're renaming a street after her.
That's like the, whatever sports team, she filters into their stadium and they got to give her the jersey.
Yes.
You think Taylor Swift cares about your jersey?
I know.
It doesn't even leave the building in her possession.
Oh, there's no chance she ever looks at that ever again. Like, there's probably roadies that are thinking, like, I don't want this. What do I need this for? A Cincinnati Reds jersey? No, thanks.
Right.
Yeah, because that's coming. Like, especially with Rogers and the Blue Jays, it's at the Rogers Center. Like, it's going to be. Although she's so big that I don't think anyone can even get close to her. Like, no one gets just access to her because she's playing at your stadium or in your city. Well, like, she has carte blanche over basically everything.
It would be crazy if she had to pull like a Niall Horan and what he did, where he had to abandon his ride and walk into the stadium. Like, could you imagine Taylor Swift having to do that for 5 shows here in Toronto?
Yeah. I mean, that would probably finally get stuff done downtown. Like, that would be so embarrassing for everybody. But it would cause such a commotion that it just wouldn't be possible. You're right. Like, I would guess it's a full police escort every time she gets to that building.
Oh, for sure.
Probably. Like,
she's next level. Like,
yeah.
No offense to Niall Horan.
Right.
Just like, no offense to
Niall.
the Arizona Coyotes, but not in the same league as Taylor Swift.
No, it's not. It's not even close. All right, role play level of concern coming up. We'll get into again Stan Bowman being hired as the GM out in Edmonton. Ross Tucker coming up as well. On some camp holdouts, there's a couple of big names out in San Francisco. Jordan Love is still not throwing the ball, not taking snaps, not participating in practice in Green Bay as he awaits a new deal. And there's a lot going on in the NFL as camps have opened league-wide. So more on that still to come as well. Frankie Corrado's in here on Bryan Hayes. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
Can you never ask me to stop drinking? Do you understand?
I do. I really do.
One bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
All right, role play level of concern, Frankie. We haven't done this in a while. It's always good to continue this kind of stuff in the summertime, and lots of options. The last time we played, we've established Stephen Caldwell is an option, right? He's an option. You've got Rick Bushwood's an option. Wade Boggs at a Lightning game with 48 under the table.
That's 48. Okay.
48, good. Yeah. I mean, you can take
extreme.
it whichever way you want.
That is 48 is extreme.
It's extreme, but not for Wade Boggs. Not according to Wade Boggs himself. He's told the story, I guess, now on the record, like doing podcasts recently about flying across the country and drinking like 113 beers or something.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty outrageous.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get after it here. Role play level of concern. You're playing the role of Craig Berube. Craig Berube, the new head coach of the Maple Leafs. What is your level of concern that you represent the only big change this offseason and have to be the one to change the fortunes of the Leafs?
2 vodka sodas on a patio for that.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because you've brought me here to be the guy. I knew that was going to be the case. I knew that coming in here, you weren't going to get rid of Matthews, Nylander, Tavares wasn't going anywhere, and you were going to give me a chance to coach Mitch Marner. I asked you to reconstruct the blue line for me, which you needed to do anyways, and you did. You got me some pieces that I like. We have a goaltending duo that, if they stay healthy, I think gives us a decent chance to win. So I'm the difference. Sheldon Keefe is out. I'm going to implement what made me a good coach in St. Louis. I'm going to preach accountability. I'm going to preach a different way of playing in the playoffs, a different kind of attitude, mindset. I was well aware of that when I took this job, and I'm okay with that.
I love that answer, and I think you've hit on something there. Mitch Marner, Craig Berube being best friends is in the best interest of both guys here. Like, if you're Mitch Marner, ride that Berube wave. Go out there and play hard, play well, rack up points, block some shots, throw a couple of hits, And everyone will not everyone, because there's a number of people, Leaf fans who are jaded. Some are apathetic to all of this, who will just say, I'll believe it when I see it in the playoffs. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong in doing so. You're more than entitled to have that viewpoint, but it's a long season. 82 games is a long season. And being a fan, a lot of it's supposed to be about being fun, watching your team, hoping for the best. And if Mitch Marner looks a little bit different under Craig Berube in any capacity, that'll be in the best interest of both parties. Because Berube will get credit for that. Mitch will get credit because he'll be like, I'm not worried about the contract in the future or what happened in the past or how people were talking about me in the offseason. I'm here to perform and play Craig Berube hockey. That would go a long way for him.
And what does that look like? How different, how different is the messaging? Like, you kind of know the way it is, Hayes. Like, the messaging is the messaging. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't change that much. Maybe there's a different connection that's made between Berube and Marner, and maybe that rings home for him. I don't know. But he's going to be the one who's responsible. Like, it's going to be his way, has to be doing something different that leads to success in the playoffs. And the regular season, again, is just a formality. It is. And it's a tough division in the Atlantic, but everyone is saying, okay, get us there, and let's see how different it looks in the playoffs. Like, I don't know how much you're going to learn from the regular season. Again, we can enjoy the ride. We can enjoy everything that happens, but it's like as soon as that calendar flips and it's the middle of April, it's like, okay, now time to see what we really got and how different it actually looks.
And how different Berube is, I guess, behind the bench, and how they play with Berube behind the bench. All right, I'm playing the role of Bev Priestman. Just play it, and I'll read the thing after.
You can never, ever ask me to stop drinking.
Yeah, Bevicek Priestman. Bev Harbaugh. The question was, if you don't medal, you're going to lose your job. But yeah, it's Nick Cage. Again, I found it interesting the way Dunlop described it. That and Brendan Dunlop is incredibly tuned in terms of not only the Canadian soccer scene but also the international scene and how this kind of stuff does happen. That seems extreme. That drone flying happens. Like I don't see that the same as sign stealing. In baseball or deflated footballs. In football, like using drones is extreme and seems like an infraction that everyone should understand you simply can't do, regardless of what you might hear through the grapevine, right? Well, this other team did it, so we're going to do it. That seems to be a bit of a stretch. But this is embarrassing for Canada soccer. It's embarrassing for Bev Priestman, who's done a really good job. Again, this team won gold 3 years ago. I think it was the triumphant moment of the Olympic Games. And it was a great Olympic Games for Canadian athletes. There were a lot of great Canadians that had great moments. But that team took on a life of its own. They win in penalties. Everything about it was incredible to watch. And I think the country needed that, considering what had been going on with COVID. The whole world was still kind of shut down. Everyone was kind of feeling, there's a lot of anxiety in the country at that point. And I think a lot of Canadians jumped on their bandwagon, and, Bev Priestman obviously being a part of that. But when you run into a situation like this, members of your staff are already being sent home. You're recusing yourself of the New Zealand game. If it gets ugly in terms of what they do on the pitch, I think it's Nick Cage for Bev. I think if I'm playing the role of Bev Priestman, I'm pretty uncertain of my future in terms of what's happening here in Canada.
Yeah, and especially now if it comes out that this is something that's been happening in the past, right? Like this investigation, it just could be scratching the surface. Could lead to another investigation about, things that have happened in the past on the women's side, maybe on the men's side. And that's where it's going to be very telling as to what's been happening with this program over the years. All
right, Frankie, you're playing the role of Concacaf, something we talked about with our boy Brendan Dunlop. What is your level of concern that Canada is now the king and everyone else is chasing them on the men's side in terms of men's soccer?
I'm 3 tequila gingers on a nice sunny day.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Just
Like,
a
I'm
light
keeping
drink.
it. Yeah, I'm keeping it casual still. Like, I'll have 3. I'll be feeling all right. I still believe like the U.S. side is going to produce a lot of talent. There's just so much. There's so many players coming through the pipeline there, and they have more of a pedigree of being a team that's on the international stage, playing in World Cups. Like, I think Canada is going to be right there with Mexico, with the United States, but I don't know if it's going to be Canada's the king and everyone else is just playing for second place. Like, I think it's going to be close and it's going to be competitive. So I don't worry that I'm being left behind and, kind of chasing Canada for a long time.
I think that's probably reasonable. We might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, fourth place at Concacaf or at Copa America. But this is a team that won Concacaf in the pursuit of making the World Cup in 22. The Americans and the Mexicans went home quickly, at Copa America, really, really quickly. And, those have been the giants, Mexico in particular, and the Americans, like you said, at times they've been a top 10 ranked country or real close to it. But Canada appears to be here to stay, man. And they've got a young nucleus that I think will continue to grow. They seem to have more and more players coming through the grassroots level every couple of years. And 2026 will really be the indicator. But if Canada can go the deepest in that tournament, past Mexico, past the Americans, at that point, I think you really do put the crown on and say, we're at the top here. I don't know what that's worth. It doesn't mean you're Argentina, Brazil, Spain, Germany, England, et cetera, in terms of the world powerhouses. But it is something that has really never been a part of the conversation in Canada at any point ever. Like, at no point ever have we talked about the likelihood that we were on par with the Americans or with Mexico, let alone possibly exceeding what they can bring.
Not even close.
No,
not
so
even
that's
close.
great.
In our whole history of watching sports, you and I,
Never
would we have ever experienced anything close to that?
Never. I'm playing the role of Rory McIlroy. What is the level of concern that my major play will spin completely out of control? It's not a pint on the patio. It's not Nick Cage. I'll give it a Stevie Caldwell.
A couple of whiskeys and 5 or 6 beers.
Yeah, I think I'll give it a Stevie because there's 2 ways to look at this. One, the majors are now a thing of the past. Like, you have to wait a long, long time before you get to Augusta again. So me, Rory McIlroy, I get to breathe. I don't have to worry about the next major. I'm great when it comes to pursuing FedEx Cups. I'm great when it comes to, showing up wherever I'm going to show up early into next season and probably put up great numbers, probably win a tournament or 2, and still be the face and voice of the PGA Tour. That's awesome. So I don't have to worry about the majors. But the flip side of that is I have to wait so long before I can get back and prove to myself that what just happened at Troon, me missing those 2 putts at the U.S. Open, are not going to spiral me out of control. And mentally, I have to believe, in fact, I know because I am playing the role of Rory McIlroy, that's going to make me lose sleep for a while. Being uncertain of how it's going to look when I get back there. And listen, McIlroy's an uber talent. He's a great player. He will be in contention. But it's not about contending anymore. It's about closing, and he hasn't closed in a decade. And what just happened in Scotland over the weekend, that was wild. Like, he was hitting some shots that a 20 handicap wouldn't shoot.
No kidding.
Like, it was crazy.
It was ugly, Hayes, and I almost take the stance that, like, the majors being a long ways away now actually works in his favor. And I heard the guys from Golf Talk Canada talking this morning, and it made sense. Like, Rory needs to have some kind of a break, like a mental break, a physical break, but he needs to be away from the game for a little while. During the season, though, during the golf season, can't do that. Like, he's got obligations. He's got sponsor, things that he needs to attend. He's got tournaments he's got to go to. But when there is an off season, that will be like his first time where he can kind of flip it, and switch it off. And then we'll be approaching major season again. So I think that schedule might actually help him, like, so that he doesn't have to be forced to play these things. He can actually have some time off. And then next thing you know, it's Augusta.
Yeah. Next thing you know, it's Augusta. All right, Frankie, you're playing the role of Josh Allen, quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. What is your level of
Overrated
concern?
Josh Allen?
Yes, according to some anonymous executive in the NFL, which to me is absurd. I think if you were to question maybe, his turnovers, obviously he turns the ball over a fair amount, throws interceptions, he does fumble the ball, he loses fumbles, yet he is basically a one-man show in terms of that running game. And he has been for years, so fumbles are going to naturally take place at times. He can be a riverboat gambler, but he's unbelievable. He's unbelievably talented. He makes the playoffs every single year. He's the man.
Yep.
So you are Josh Allen, who, yes, some people, I guess, think that you might be overrated. What is your level of concern the Bills' roster turnover is going to make it tough for you to win this season?
Play it.
Ooh.
You can never, ever ask me to stop drinking.
Okay, now keep in mind, we're talking win, we're talking Super Bowl.
Right,
win.
exactly.
We're not talking about making the playoffs or having a respectful finish. We are talking about winning the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Josh Allen has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders to begin with. Running game hasn't necessarily been the greatest over the years. He's had to carry it. He's had more targets to throw to. He's going to have less targets to throw to this season with Diggs gone. And maybe, you know what, maybe there is a little bit of a youth influx there, and maybe it works out for the best. But Kansas City is not going anywhere. Cincinnati, going to be very good. They're still playing in a competitive division with, we'll see what Miami's made of. Mm-hmm. We'll see what the Jets look like with Aaron Rodgers. Like, the path to the Super Bowl is harder this year than it maybe has been in the past couple years for the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen will be a rock star like he always is. There's going to be a lot of responsibility for him. That leads to sometimes the turnovers or forcing plays when he shouldn't. I have a hard time seeing the Bills get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl this year when so much is being asked of one guy.
Yeah, and yet, it was a similar narrative surrounding Kansas City this time last year, where there was turnover and rookies and young players. Yet they had Mahomes, they had Kelsey, and they had Andy Reid,
and they've been there and
they've been there and done that, and a weaker division as well. Where the Bills, Miami's, their offensive weapons are absurd. And if Tua stays healthy and Tua plays in a warm climate, then they're going to put up absurd numbers and they're going to win games. I don't know if that defense can win enough. I don't know if Tua can throw the ball in December on the road. Like, it's a legitimate concern if this guy can win in inclement weather on the road. And the Jets, you're talking about Aaron Rodgers, his Achilles, that offensive line. They got a ton of talent, a great defense. But I think the Bills are a slight favorite to win that division. I still think they'll win that division, but I think it'll be a tougher battle than it has been in years past. And I'm with you on that. I don't see a championship roster here in Buffalo that competes with, again, what Kansas City can bring, what Baltimore is going to bring.
There's just a lot out the door. There was a lot out the door for Buffalo.
Houston's good.
It just feels like they're asking for some internal improvements.
No one wants to hear that. That's the old Ross Atkins line. You don't want to hear internal improvement. Yeah. I'll guarantee you, like, you talk about studies and management teams and PR teams, that is a terminology that will be excommunicated. Like, it'll disappear from sports, the lexicon of sports. Saying that internal improvements is what you're banking on, you can't ever do that again.
For sure.
You just can't. You can't, even if that's what you're banking on. Do not say that publicly.
It'll be page 3 of the PowerPoint that the PR guy gives to the GM in their little meeting.
Right. Welcome to the job. I'll be working closely with you. Turn to page 3. Internal improvements. Don't ever say that. Ever again. Because nobody wants to hear that. All right. We've got Ross Tucker coming up talking some NFL in about 20 minutes. And more on Stan Bowman being hired as the GM in Edmonton for the Oilers. So we'll get to that a little bit later this afternoon as well. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Ross Tucker will join us into the next hour. We've got some audio and video that we want to play. The new head coach of UCLA, their football team. I guess it was Big Ten Media Day. Just still strange that UCLA is even in the Big Ten. You want to see this? Do you want to hear this, Frankie? Yeah. Because I actually haven't seen it all. I know it's gone viral and a lot of people have been sending it to me. But let's play it because it's been described to me as possibly the most awkward media reveal we've seen in a long time.
How you guys doing? I'm happy to be here. Glad to be a part of this great conference. Finally putting two great emblems together, UCLA and the Big Ten. We're a school that's won, 123 championships, so this fits us being right in this conference. Football-wise, we're just excited. I'm sure you guys don't know too much about UCLA, but our football program, but we're in LA. It's us and USC. We I'm just basically excited, really. That's it. Any questions?
A lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
That's DeShaun Foster, who, if you didn't know, UCLA, they're in LA.
Yeah,
they're in LA, and he wants you to know that they're in LA, and so is USC.
And you may not know a lot about their football program.
Yeah, but they're in LA, and then his teleprompter froze, and he didn't know what to say anymore.
Is that a teleprompter
No,
issue?
it can't be, man.
You know what?
That's I'm going to wing it, and then he got up there and realized I don't have enough to wing it, so I should have prepared something.
No kidding. Like, maybe just write something down. It's almost like they told him 6 minutes before, is like, hey, man, can you just actually go say something about this? All right, sure.
Right, exactly.
That's all I got. I got some geography for you.
Like, what happens a lot of times, yeah, I'll tell you exactly where we play, who else is in the city, and now we're in the Big Ten, and I'm really excited. What happens a lot of times, I think, with like coaches or managers or even athletes, is they think they're just going to show up and questions are going to be asked immediately, right? Like, it's just a scrum. So you just react to what people are asking you. And I think you're probably right. They probably said, actually, you have to say a few words before they're going to ask you something. And then you got what you just got. We're in LA, and I'm just really excited.
I was worried. I was worried about the dead air. Like, I'm worried if someone's listening to us on the radio, they're like, "Oh, these guys cut out."
No, we didn't. Just playing DeShaun Foster, and UCLA is part of the Big Ten now. Very excited.
Yeah.
Final hour coming up. Yeah, and we're in LA. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 from Toronto.